The future of farming in England could be about to change after Brexit. The EU subsidies farmers receive based on how much land they own will be phased out in a 7-year plan. The government is hoping to attract entrepreneurs to the sector to try and create more productive and sustainable farming. It also wants part of the landscape to be returned to nature. But the National Farmers Union says it could undermine domestic food production. I'm joined now by Mark Bridgeman, who's the president of the Country Land and Business Association. Thanks very much for speaking with us here on EURONEWS. All the way through Brexit, the referendum, we'd heard Vote Leave saying that farmers should vote Leave. It was an amazing opportunity for them because they'd pretty much get the same amount of subsidies. Even last year in 2019, after Boris Johnson had won the premiership, he was in North Wales saying that farmers would be given the best deal. What do you make of these new announcements from the government today?
So the government, as you say, Boris Johnson and the government said that they would maintain the same amount of funding for the farming sector, and that is what will happen. The total budget going to farmers through to the end of this parliament and the end of 24 will remain the same. It's how the money is spent. This is particularly focused on England. Wales and Scotland will be different, but for England, it'll be a move away from the area-based payment to these more environmental-focused payments.
But if farmers are not getting the same amount of money that's coming in, you've got English farmers who are complaining that they're not paid fair prices by the supermarket for the likes of the meat that they sell to them or for the milk, and they're not getting this money, then surely it's going to put some of these farmers under a very difficult financial situation.
Yeah, it certainly will. If you look at the breakdown of the government's own statistics, around 3/4 of farming businesses, the pure agricultural part of it, doesn't make money. And if you look at the total farms, for many of the livestock farms and arable farms, around half of their income comes from the basic payment, which is part of the CAP. But as I say, the total funding going into the sector will remain the same. So as farmers, I'm a farmer, we will have the opportunity to invest in some of these environmental schemes, ELMS as it's called, where their focus is taking public money for public goods. So we will have to do different things, but we will have opportunities to engage in these. The problem is that the government has set out what the falls in the subsidies are going to be over the next 4 years without yet really putting flesh on the bone of what the new schemes are going to look like. We think the direction of travel is actually a sensible one because we've got to address the biodiversity, the climate change issues. But really right now, there's no real detail around what that's actually going to mean on the ground for us farmers.
Do you find that a little bit shocking, considering we're in December 2020 now and these new rules are due to come in 2021? Do you wish you'd been given more time?
Yeah, well, that's definitely one of the things that we've been feeding back to government. We've known about this for 2 or 3 years. So not only are we going to have this transition away from the CAP when we leave that at the 1st of January, and this fairly rapid transition. But of course, as your show you've just been talking about, we've got the small matter of the EU trade deal, which is just crucial for our sector. 70% of our exports goes to the EU. So if we don't get a deal, there's a really, really big problem. Take the sheep sector is the one that everyone focuses on or one of the ones they focus on because 40% of our exports go to 40% of lamb is exported and 90% of that goes to Europe. So if we don't get a deal, it's going to be a real major problem for the farming sector in Britain.
And part of the schemes, as you were mentioning there, was these environmental programs. One of them is reforesting land. Is there not a risk here that farmers will, instead of trying to raise animals and take them off to market, they will be instead reforesting areas? Potentially that would mean food shortages in the UK?
Well, I'm not sure it necessarily mean food shortages. I mean, we currently produce 60% of the food that we consume, and 40% is imported. What the government is committed to at the time of the election is to increase tree cover in in Britain. It's pretty low compared to other European countries. It's only 13%, and they want to drive that up to 19%. In European countries, it's higher than that, and this is all to do with getting to net zero. The government has legislated that as a country we need to get to net zero by 2050, and one of the key ways, just about anything we do in the economy creates carbon, lets carbon off. The one area that you can effectively soak it up is through land use practices. And the best one of all, well, is peatland and restoring the peat that we have, both in the uplands and in the lowlands, but also reforesting and carbon sequestering. But also, as part of these environmental schemes, how we manage the soil and that we farm is a key component of that. So in order to get to net zero, what we do on the land will need to change. And it's a great opportunity for farmers and landowners to be part of that.
Mark Bridgman joining us there from the UK. Thank you very much indeed.